Hello there, and welcome to With Love Jay podcast. I'm your host, Jaye Agape, checking in with you guys on this wonderful Wednesday. So usually, new episodes are uploaded every Tuesday, but this past week I had some annoying little allergies and sinuses floating around my household, so today is one of the first days that I can actually breathe through my nostrils. So forgive me if I sound a little nasally. So today's episode is coming to you a little late. But as I always say, I may get there late, but I always get there. So I don't really know about you guys and how you're feeling, but for me, I've been feeling this just great shift in the energy of the world. And it's a really strange feeling because every day, whether I'm scrolling through social media or just watching clips of the news, I see the disaster around the world. The world is literally falling apart at the seams. But even though the world is falling apart and I see that it's falling apart, I have this sense of calm, this sense of peace, this sense of hope. And to be honest with you, to anyone who isn't me, and to anyone who doesn't understand what I'm going through right now in this season, if they were to look in as an outsider in my life, they'd probably be like, Jay, girl, what's your next move? What you about to do? Like, sis, you're not a little nervous a little bit? But despite what I currently have going on in my life, I remember the words of my Father in heaven and how he said, my grace is sufficient. His grace alone is just enough. And in those 4 words alone, I have comfort. I have peace. I have joy. The world can be falling apart by its thread all around me, but I still have this sense of peace, just knowing that the Lord has a promise for me. My backyard is one of my favorite places to be, and to any of you who have followed me on social media, I've said it before that my backyard is the one place in my house where I go, where I really talk to God. And yes, I talk to him anywhere, but I don't know. Something about sitting under the firmament, feeling the warmth of the sun just heat my face up, feeling the breeze just blowing in my hair and listening to the birds chirping, watching the clouds just move slowly and hearing the trees rustling. It's just a very divine experience. And it seems to be the place that I hear his voice the loudest, to be honest. So anyway, as I was taking some time to just soak in the presence of the Lord in my backyard, I had this revelation, and it just made so much sense to me that nothing of this world truly matters anymore. The material things that we slave ourselves for, they don't matter. People will put themselves in bondage, trying to achieve or maintain what the world tells them that they need to have. The world has become a slave to money. And really, there's no such thing as money. Money no longer exists in this world that we live in. It's just printed paper. The money in your bank account doesn't even actually belong to you. The numbers that you see in your bank account are just electronic placeholders. The money that you think you have in your bank account isn't actually there. Money, quote unquote, just gets moved around from one bank account to the next, and it never really belongs to one person. If you've ever heard the term robbing Peter to pay Paul, that's exactly what the money exchange means. But you are never meant to know that, though. This is why people who are wealthy, they don't own a lot of money. They don't say that they have a lot of cash. They own a lot of assets, because numbers in a bank account mean nothing. And eventually, my friend, the economy is going to crash, and all of the money that you have slaved your whole life towards accumulating will mean absolutely nothing. If every person at the same time, on the same day, were to request their entire savings and checking, their entire 401k and retirement fund money, there would not be enough money to pay every single person what they are owed. America is in debt, trillions of dollars in the hole, trillions of dollars in debt. Money is being printed way faster than what the country can afford. And at this point, every dollar that's printed should just say, I owe you. The government recently declared that Social Security money is expected to run out. Everything that you have been told to depend on means absolutely nothing. This is why Christ demanded that if you be one of his disciples, that you must not love this world. This world is going to perish and everything in it. But if you love the world more than you love the Father, you won't have a single clue what to do when you start to run out of resources, when your back is against the wall. In John chapter 8, verse 34, Jesus said, "Truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who practices sin is a slave to sin." In this world, its greed and its love of money is its sin. People who love money become a slave to money. They become a slave to greed. There are people who will work 3 and 4 jobs, working 80 plus hours in a single week at a job that they absolutely hate, where they're undermined, underprivileged, overworked, and literally just slave themselves with zero to minimal return. And it's not because they have to, because I do understand that there are those who absolutely have to do what they need to do to provide for their family. But to the ones who don't have to but choose to, they make themselves a slave just to say that they have this and that they have that. I remember when I was in my 20s, I worked for a call center. I worked almost 70 hours in a week, doing overtime after overtime, working on holidays, just to support my shopping addiction. And I didn't have a real addiction. I just call it that because I was an impulsive buyer and I had no financial literacy. But I would slave myself as a young adult, wasting my life away, wasting my purpose away, working at a call center that I hated, where I wasn't respected. But the overtime checks were good. And I burnt myself out. And I remember thinking, man, I'd rather live minimally and have peace rather than work myself to death just to look good and to go shopping every week and to eat out every week. It was terrible. So when I say these things, don't think that I'm judging, because I'm not. It's just that I used to be a slave to money. Like a lot of the world. I was a slave to many things, but money was a big one. It makes sense to me why the apostles, they sold all of their belongings and they split everything that they owned amongst themselves. They were perfectly okay with just having enough. They were content. They knew how to be content. They knew that God's grace was sufficient and that they ought not worry about what the next day's troubles and toils would bring. They had money, number one, because they trusted in the Lord. And number two, because they had established a community of charity amongst themselves. They were not a slave to the world. They were rich, but they didn't make having the nicest house and the biggest palace and the finest linens a priority in their life, because they were not a slave to the world. They were blessed abundantly, both spiritually and physically, because they didn't have the laws of the world written in their hearts. They made doing God's will the priority, and God blessed them accordingly. They weren't slaving away to put away retirement money and a huge savings account and traveling money. They knew that what they needed, they would acquire at the time that it was needed. Those things didn't matter, and it still doesn't. None of this is going to matter anymore very soon. These bodies that the Lord gave us are just vessels for our spirit. And He only gave us a maximum expiration date of about 80 to 100 years max. We came from the dirt, and back to the dirt we shall return. None of your cars, your houses, your jewelry, your real estate, your investments are going to be buried with you. None of it. It doesn't matter. What matters is your soul, your obedience to carry out God's will for your life, walking in obedience and submission, allowing God to use you. And I'm not saying to throw away your life to trash or to be lazy or to give yourself to poverty, because of course you have to work and make a life for yourself, and you have to do good things, and you have to be purposeful. But don't be a slave to what the world says that you need to have. You know, I always thought that being financially free meant having money and having wealth and having lots of assets and income and passive income, being able to make money while you're not even working. And yes, those things are great. But to me, to be financially free means to no longer be a slave to money. Having the chains broken off of my life that once said that you have to have wealth to be somebody. It's not allowing money to be my identity or my status or to dictate who I am. I was reading in the book of Ecclesiastes, and I believe it was Solomon who said, "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." He was one of the wealthiest men that we read about in the Bible, and still, with all his riches and wisdom, he said everything is vanity. I have seen everything under the sun, and everything is vanity and vexation of the spirit. Nothing of this world matters, my friend. In John chapter 8 and verse 32, Christ said, "And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." And by golly, if I don't get goosebumps every time I read that scripture, because I never understood what it meant until I really came into the truth of knowing the Lord. See, once you realize that Christ breaks you from the chains of the world, everything makes sense. The scales fall off of your eyes. You are no longer blind. You are no longer asleep. Christ is the truth, and He is who sets you free. I don't care about money because I'm no longer in bondage to money. I won't care about being rejected because I'm no longer in bondage to needing to feel validated. I don't care about missing out on events and concerts and girls' night out at the club because I'm no longer in bondage to lust. I'm no longer in bondage to the world. I'm no longer in bondage to alcohol or drugs or secular music. I'm okay with being in this season of singleness, because while all of my friends are fornicating and in fornicating relationships, I'm okay with that because I am no longer in any way in bondage to loneliness, to fornication, to sexual impurity. I'm free from that. Christ is my identity. Egypt was the house of bondage. And it was Yahweh who delivered Israel out of Egypt and led them out of captivity. He set them free. When Christ gave his life on the cross, it was through his grace that we were set free and were no longer required to keep the works of the Mosaic law. It is the Father who sets us free time after time. So if you were given this free gift, then why send yourself back into Egypt? Why go back into bondage? Why go back into the house of bondage, trying to keep up with what the world tells you that you ought to have just to be somebody? Forget the world. They're going to perish anyway. This world is going to perish. When the Lord returns, these bodies will drop, and a much greater life is waiting just beyond the stars. I really want to encourage you today. If you're going through a season of uncertainty and it's just not feeling good, and you're stressed about how you'll make this happen and how you'll make that happen, just remember who you belong to and know that you will be taken care of. You may not have all of what you want, but the Lord will provide what you need. When you give your heart to him, and when you trust, and when you have faith of a mustard seed, and sometimes that means taking losses. Sometimes life happens fast, and you've just got to pick up and go. Sometimes there aren't any warnings. I'm reminded of how the Israelite women felt when they were told that it was time to pick up and leave out of Egypt with Moses. The Bible never really said how they felt about packing up and leaving really the life that they had always known behind. They had to stop everything, gather up only what they could carry, and hit the high road, literally into the unknown, into the wilderness. The Bible says the bread that they were needing hadn't even had time to leaven up, and they had to stuff it in their pockets. They didn't kick and scream and fight and ask questions and why, what are we? They just trusted God. And in that case, the Most High was leading them away from their bondage. It sounds real familiar, huh? It's not easy trusting yourself to leave everything behind to follow the call of Jesus. It's not easy not being in control of your life. It is your human nature to want to know when, where, why, and how. But this is the gift. You are now free. Even when things are scary and you're not sure where your path may lead to next, you are free. You are no longer a slave to sin. You're no longer a slave to your past circumstances. You no longer have to be tied down to anything of this world. I'm telling you now, I just want to put my house back on the market and buy an RV and some land and just go. I don't want any attachments to anything. I don't even want to be in the city anymore. But I trust that God will put me on the path that I need to be on, whatever it may look like. So focus on your freedom and stop looking at your bondage. You are free. Focus on that and take the journey one step at a time. Just keep your eyes locked on God. I really hope that this message has blessed you in some way, and I pray that you stay encouraged. Thank you for tuning in to With Love Jay podcast. Until next time.